This is CBC Vancouver News.
If the federal government decides to remove the legal backstop requiring us to have a consumer carbon tax in British Columbia, we will end the consumer carbon tax in British Columbia.
BC's Premier makes a major policy shift on the carbon tax 5 weeks before the provincial election.
Says he's going to be campaigning against his own government's policies.
He needs to make this transparent, fair.
Plus,
we started looking into alternative plans and backup arrangements.
Air Canada passengers scramble for options as the pilot strike looms.
Starting to see cancellations start for Saturday and Sunday.
And
you'll see this place will boom.
Definitely help a lot, like students and the people using transit for sure.
The province pledges hundreds of new homes and services around the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain expansion.
I mean, you have to be able to afford it also.
Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. We start with a major policy reversal by BC's Premier on the carbon tax. David Eby says he would scrap the tax on consumers if the federal government lifts the legal requirement to collect it. As Katie DeRosa reports, the move has the BC Conservatives and Greens pouncing on the Premier.
That if the federal government decides to remove the legal backstop requiring us to have a consumer carbon tax in British Columbia, we will end the consumer carbon tax in British Columbia.
A bombshell announcement from Premier David Eby that few saw coming. After repeatedly defending the carbon tax, Eby now says BC would scrap it for consumers if Ottawa removes the requirement for the provinces to collect it. He says BC would still force what he calls big polluters to pay a price on carbon.
I think it's critical to also recognize that the context and the challenge for British Columbians has changed. A lot of British Columbians are struggling with affordability.
BC Conservative leader John Rustad, who vows to scrap the tax entirely if he forms government, is taking credit for Eby's sudden reversal.
Today we actually saw David Eby come out and he says he's going to be campaigning against his own government's policies. I find that quite incredible, and I guess what it comes down to is he's torn between two lovers, whether it is Jagmeet Singh or whether it is Mr. Trudeau.
Eby revealed the policy change at a rally in Vancouver alongside Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, the only other NDP premier in Canada. Kinew has asked the federal government to exempt Manitoba from the carbon tax. BC introduced North America's first carbon tax in 2008 under the former BC Liberal government. Until now, Eby was the only Canadian premier to defend it. But the levy has become increasingly unpopular with British Columbians struggling to afford gas, groceries, and other costs. The carbon tax jumped this year from $65 to $80 per ton. Critics have said that 23% hike adds 18 cents to each liter of fuel. Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh also says he no longer supports a carbon tax that hits working Canadians.
We want to see an approach to fighting the climate crisis where it doesn't put the burden on the backs of working people, where big polluters have to pay their fair share.
BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau says Eby is taking a step backward on addressing the climate emergency.
This is an astonishing step for this premier to take and this government to demonstrate that they don't have a real stand when it comes to climate change and carbon pollution.
Barry Penner, who introduced BC's carbon tax as Environment Minister in 2008, argues it hasn't done enough to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and has lost the support of British Columbians.
I think the provincial NDP made a mistake, a strategic error, when they moved away from the principle of revenue neutrality.
The federal government under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made some concessions over the carbon tax, exempting the Atlantic provinces from the tax on home heating oil. He's under increasing pressure from Pierre Poilievre to scrap it entirely, and it's clear Eby, with the provincial election 5 weeks away, is feeling the pressure too. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
Passengers across the country are bracing for an Air Canada pilot strike. Earlier this week, the airline announced it was finalizing plans to halt operations amid ongoing labor negotiations. Flights could be grounded as early as this weekend. Our John Hernandez spoke with passengers who are preparing for the worst.
Quite a bit of stress, quite a bit of worry, a little bit of anxiety.
Ryan Schaap and his wife are supposed to fly out of Vancouver International Airport next week, a once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon trip to Asia.
We are going to explore a lot of the country in Vietnam. My wife and I are avid surfers.
They're scheduled to fly Air Canada to Singapore, but a looming airline shutdown has forced them to make some last-minute contingency plans.
We decided upon ourselves that we weren't going to put this off. We started looking into alternative plans and backup arrangements, and that's what we've done.
Air Canada pilots are prepared to strike amid ongoing labor negotiations for higher wages. The airline has announced it could start suspending operations on Sunday. If a deal isn't reached by Wednesday, the airline would shut down completely.
Air Canada makes up the largest airline in the country, so they make up the largest number of our passengers that are going to be affected by it.
This Vancouver travel agent says he has no shortage of concerned customers as the airline begins to preemptively cancel flights.
We're starting to see cancellations start for Saturday and Sunday, the 13th, 14th, and then of course on the 15th we're going to see a much larger rollback begin.
So what should you do if you're flying Air Canada in the coming days? This passenger rights advocate says sit tight and wait.
Once Air Canada cancels your flight, you have protection by the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, by the Carriage by Air Act, and you will have to be rebooked by the airline on a competitor airline if necessary.
As for Schaap, he's already booked 2 refundable alternative tickets to Singapore out of San Francisco.
I don't know what type of planes, trains, and automobiles situation it could be that we could find ourselves in heading to San Francisco, but we're flying to Singapore one way or another, that's for sure.
Air Canada says customers whose flights are canceled will be rebooked or refunded. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC government is promising hundreds of new homes and amenities to be built hand in hand with the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain expansion project. As Michelle Gassoub reports, it's a big investment in one of the fastest growing cities in the country.
This stretch of Fraser Highway on 152nd will soon look very different. It's slated to be the site of one of 8 new stations along the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain project.
It's about time that housing and transportation infrastructure became one set of decision-making, one set of analysis, one priority.
The project will extend the Expo Line 16 kilometers along Fraser Highway from King George Station to 203rd Street in Langley. Now, the province has purchased 14 properties in the area, promising to build 700 homes and amenities like childcare spaces, grocery stores, and more.
When you look at the history of British Columbia, we have not seen the level of investment we are seeing in Surrey right now ever.
Surrey is the 3rd fastest growing city in Canada. Its population expanding so quickly, it's slated to be BC's largest city by the end of the decade. Faced with an influx, many residents welcome the investment.
You'll see this place will boom. Housing, population, everything. It's good for the business. And this place will be developed as, like Vancouver, So, which is really good.
It would definitely help a lot, like students and the people using transit for sure. BC needs to do a lot of more development, looking at the population growing intensively.
The province has historically been barred from buying land for the purpose of building housing, but new legislation has enabled it to purchase land near major transit hubs. Still, there are questions. The province wouldn't put a dollar amount on the cost of the affordable homes they plan to build.
You have to be able to afford it also, so you got to be looking at between $600 to $800 anyways, probably.
Building the line will cost $2 billion more than originally estimated, putting the total price tag at $6 billion.
They put it off too long. They could have had it built for a third of the price if they did it earlier.
The SkyTrain extension should be up and running by late 2029. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Surrey.
After the BC Tree Fruits Cooperative announced it was shutting down in July, leaving Okanagan fruit growers without processing, storage, and packing services, the province is stepping in to compensate farmers for past harvests. The provincial government says the Investment Agriculture Foundation of BC is redirecting $4 million to make sure co-op members get the money they are owed. The co-op, made up of more than 230 members, says it was seeking court direction to liquidate its assets after 88 years of operation. It says it has more than $58 million in liabilities.
Definitely a step in the right direction. I think farmers here are desperate, especially with a closure of such a organization that does so much for our industry here. And I think that the government bodies are listening to us.
The province says the foundation will pay growers in the coming weeks and then recoup the funds at the end of the court process involving the cooperative, which filed for creditor protection last month. Food banks in BC say 2024 has been its busiest year yet. For the first time ever, it saw 100,000 unique visitors in 1 month. Food banks say it's a major concern seeing how many people are needing help while they struggle to keep up with demand.
We're seeing an increase in the number of people who are working full-time, yet still needing to access food banks. There is a clear gap between what it costs to get by in BC and the funds available to people.
We have to work extremely hard now to just raise the funds and collect the food to be able to serve these people. It's getting very, very demanding.
Food Banks BC says housing, rent, low wages, and cost of living are the top reasons why people are turning to them. Harm reduction vending machines on Vancouver Island are being suspended after the Premier ordered a review of the kiosks. The machines, which dispensed free testing kits and drug paraphernalia, were placed at hospitals in Nanaimo, Campbell River, and Victoria last year.
To undertake an initiative to lower access to a life-saving medication like naloxone, I think is it's short-sighted, it's potentially dangerous, and should be reconsidered.
David Eby ordered the review in August after the BC Conservative candidate for Nanaimo, Lanceville, posted a video to social media highlighting her concerns about the machines. Harm reduction advocates say the machines helped people who use drugs to stay safe. The province says it continues to offer harm reduction supplies through peer support and service providers. A year and a half after a Dawson Creek woman was found dead at a resort in Mexico, a Canadian man accused of killing her has been found not guilty by a Mexican court. Family members of the victim, 23-year-old Kiera Agnew, and the accused both confirmed the man's acquittal. The man's mother told CBC in a phone interview that her son was flying back from Mexico to Canada today. Agnew's sister said in March 2023, Kiera was in Mexico with her boyfriend at the time of her death. They were staying in Playa del Carmen. Tiana Agnew says her family is shocked and disappointed and still have many questions about how the case was handled.
But in all honesty, because we haven't had any answers, I found myself going over her autopsy over and over again. So it will be hard for me to ever see her the same. This grieving process has been absolutely horrible. The lack of answers has made it even worse. I'm going to try to hold on to how she was in life, but I won't be able to forget how she was left in death.
Global Affairs Canada says it is aware of a Canadian who was found not guilty of murder in Mexico, but due to privacy considerations, couldn't say more. The BC government says it will work with Ottawa to provide free hormone replacement therapy for people experiencing menopausal symptoms.
I am very proud of the direction we've taken, of the agreement that we've signed on to today, Minister Holland and I and his government and our government, to make life better for people in British Columbia, to make life more affordable for people in British Columbia and across the country, but also, I think, to improve access to basic health care.
It's part of a pharmacare bill making its way through the House of Commons, announced back in February. It also aims to implement universal single-payer first dollar coverage for a range of contraception and diabetes medications. The BC government already made most contraception free last April. With sales of beer slumping, many breweries have taken what was once one of the main features of the beverage out of the final product. Alcohol. In Victoria, long a mecca of craft beer breweries are jumping on the non-alcoholic bandwagon. Catherine Marlowe finds out how and why they've taken the plunge.
BC has long prided itself in being a leader in the craft beer industry. Canada's first brew pub, for example, Spinnaker's, opened right here in Victoria in 1984. And in the past few decades, it has become increasingly common to have a microbrewery right in your neighborhood. But here's the thing. Beer drinking is on the decline. According to StatsCan, the volume of beer purchased per person dropped to an all-time low in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. So breweries are starting to expand into non-alcoholic drinks, like Phillips Brewing, for example, which has a line of non-alcoholic beers.
I think it's really shifted and changed, right, from before where there was sort of a stigma around non-alcoholic beer and it really didn't taste very good. And now we're having so many delicious non-alcoholic beer options in the market.
Now it helps that non-alcoholic beer is getting easier to make.
There's really been two pieces. One, everyone in our industry has been so busy making alcoholic beer for the last 10 years that no one's had the time to really put into developing a non-alc product. But as sort of craft beer has started to plateau a little bit, we haven't quite seen the rocket ship that it used to be. All of a sudden, we're looking into different spaces, and then that coupled with some advances in technology to actually allow us to make really good tasting non-alcoholic beer have really been the two main threads that have sort of weaved together this opportunity for us.
Now, not everyone is keeping the focus on beer. Over at Canada's first brew pub, Spinnaker's, one of the things they're trying is mocktails. Owner Paul Hadfield says it helps them keep Spinnaker's as a place where people want to gather.
Younger generations are just not drinking alcohol the way we did at all. And one of the challenges is to create cocktails that are inclusive. And everybody wants to hang out together and want to socialize, and we need to foster that.
Now, the beer makers are pretty confident that the non-alcoholic market is here to stay, but they're going to keep brewing regular beer, too. Catherine Marlowe, CBC News, Victoria.
Imagine swimming a long body of water. After the break, you'll meet an ultra-marathoner who took on Lake Okanagan. Last summer, an ultra-endurance athlete living in Kelowna successfully swam the length of Okanagan Lake. The feat is now the subject of a documentary out this month. During the 106-kilometer swim, Nick Pelletier didn't take any breaks for sleep. He shared more about the swim on the coast with the On the Coast host, Gloria Makarenko.
If you look at it like a 106-kilometer swim, then it's a really big undertaking, but you have to kind of take it 1 kilometer at a time, 106 times. So focus right what's in front of you. That's all you have to control. What already is done, it doesn't matter. What's coming up doesn't matter unless you get through the kilometer you're on. In swimming, you're out there. You have to have people to help feed you. You have to have people to help keep you on track navigational wise and make sure you're safe if something does arise. So the crew is huge importance when things could get dire out there, and you need somebody to trust you and believe in you even when things seem kind of humanly impossible. So.
Do you have any gee, if I were to do it again, I would have done this differently? Anything like that?
I won't be doing this one again for sure. I'm moving on to other things, but like I said, I think experience is a great teacher, but really when you sit back and reflect on the experience is where you get the lessons from it. So I've taken a lot of time to reflect on this experience, and it's actually already helped me in some future endeavors I've done and will be continuing to do.
Here we have a live shot of BC Place tonight. Darius will have our full forecast coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at our weather. Darius?
Well, we've got this trough that's going to be coming in. We've had this ridging today that brought us some more blue skies, but we're already starting to see that cloud move in. That's going to continue to be the story over the next 24 hours. And in fact, we're going to see some showers start developing tomorrow, probably late afternoon or evening. We're already going to see that rain come in for the island even before that. Then after this trough passes over, and again, it's fairly weak. It's not going to bring too much, not really heavy precipitation, but really just that cloud coming back in and sticking around for a little while right through Saturday. But then again, another weak ridge built in, a little bit clearer Sunday, Monday across the south. And then again, as we get into mid next week, a much bigger, deeper trough comes in. That'll probably bring some proper rain to much of the region. Now we'll take a look at that here. Let's start with the south coast. Again, we're going to see that rain building in across the south coast over the next few hours. Some rain arrives for the island first, and then breaking in mostly just as showers to the lower mainland. But in some places may see, some isolated heavier rainfall. Some places like Deep Cove and up the Indian Arm may be seeing 30 to 40 millimeters in some places. So some decent rainfall in many spots. But if we zoom out to the rest of the province, again, we're going to look at those showers moving in for the island and for the mainland today, for tomorrow, and then late into Saturday, and then breaking in at times to parts of the interior throughout the weekend. But then the big news is probably going to be this much bigger system is going to be rolling in, affecting the northwest first, and then building in, and you're going to see, again, some very decent rain possibly coming to parts of the south in particular over the next few days. Now, along with that are these cooler temperatures. They're going to stick around. Tomorrow, not looking too bad, but then a bigger drop as we get into the weekend, especially in the southern interior, back into the teens in many places, and then temperatures will potentially start to recover into mid next week, but I wouldn't count on it just yet. Maybe just back to seasonal, so low 20s for the interior. Now, again, a little bit of rain happening in places tomorrow, but overall not too shabby, not too exciting across the interior or even here on the coast. Although again, some proper rain for the island. And last but not least, we have our forecast for the week here in Vancouver. Again, clearing up into Sunday and Monday. So this is the perfect something for everybody forecast. Janella.
A little bit of a mixed bag there, Darius. Thank you so much. That is your late news for Thursday, September 12th. Thanks so much for watching. For news on the go at any hour, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. We'll see you tomorrow.